Most people think they know Niccolo Machiavelli, and they've mostly got him wrong. He's remembered as a cynic, someone who taught rulers how to manipulate and betray. Open The Prince, though, and that's not really what's on the page. It reads more like a field report, what happens to a person or a country when they act on how things should work instead of how things actually do. That mistake has ended empires. It's also probably cost you something closer to home more than once, even if it never made the history books. January 1865. The Civil War is finally ending, and Abraham Lincoln has a problem that's keeping him up at night. The Emancipation Proclamation was only ever a wartime order. The moment the fighting stops, its legal power stops with it, and every person freed under it could, in theory, be pulled back into slavery once peace returns. The only permanent fix is the 13th Amendment, and Lincoln does not have the votes in the House to pass it. Every day the war drags on is a day closer to losing his chance entirely. A moral idealist in his position would have delivered a soaring speech about the righteousness of the cause and trusted democracy to do the right thing on its own. Lincoln didn't have that luxury, so he did something no schoolbook ever tells you a great president did. Lincoln went into the muck. He and his allies effectively ran a bribery operation out of a hotel near the Capitol. They tracked down lame duck Democrats, men who had just lost re-election and had no income coming once the session ended, and traded federal jobs, postmaster appointments, and political favors directly for votes. Then, when a rumor reached the House that Confederate peace commissioners were on their way to Washington, a rumor that would have stalled the vote entirely while everyone waited to see if the war might simply end on its own, Lincoln didn't dodge the question. He put it in writing to Congress that no such commissioners were in the city. That statement was false, and he knew it was false when he sent it. Machiavelli named this exact trap 500 years earlier. In The Prince, chapter 15, he wrote, "He who abandons what is done for what ought to be done will rather learn his ruin than his preservation." Chapter 18 goes further. "A prudent ruler," Machiavelli wrote, "cannot and must not honor his word when it places him at a disadvantage. If all men were good," he said, "that rule wouldn't be necessary. But because they are not, a ruler doesn't owe them the faith they wouldn't return." People get Machiavelli wrong constantly. They hear the word Machiavellian and picture a manipulator, someone cold and villainous. None of that is on the page. Machiavelli wasn't trying to make people worse. He was a diagnostician of reality, the same way a doctor is a diagnostician of disease. Believing the world runs on fairness when it actually runs on self-interest is a category error. Category errors get punished, no matter how good your intentions were. Lincoln refused to make it. He didn't appeal to those lame duck congressmen's conscience. He didn't ask them to vote their principles on their way out the door. He knew that wouldn't move them, because principle wasn't what was moving them in the first place. It was desperation. So he met them exactly where they actually were, worried about rent and income and what came next, instead of where a moral idealist would have wished them to be. You've probably felt the other side of this yourself. Think about the last time you were fair to someone and expected fairness in return and got taken advantage of instead. The co-worker who took credit for work you covered for them. The relationship where you kept giving more, telling yourself it would even out eventually. It rarely does. Machiavelli's answer isn't stop being fair. His answer is stop being surprised when fairness alone doesn't protect you. It's better to align your goals with other people's incentives than with their gratitude. Machiavelli had an image for this too. The lion and the fox. A ruler, he wrote, needs both, because each one is helpless against the other's specialty. A lion can overpower almost anything standing in front of it, but it can't see a trap being laid 2 moves ahead, and cunning walks straight past brute strength without ever triggering it. A fox can see every trap coming from a mile away, but put it in front of raw, overwhelming force, and cleverness doesn't save it. Lincoln, in that hotel room and in that lie to Congress, was playing the fox, reading the room, working the angles, staying 2 steps ahead of men who thought they were the ones doing the negotiating. Not every situation calls for the fox. Some call for the lion, the blunt, forceful, no negotiating move a leader sometimes has to make. Getting that wrong once in a while is forgivable. Never being willing to become whichever one the moment actually needs is not. And it worked. The amendment passed the House on January 31st, 1865, clearing the 2/3 threshold by a margin of 2 votes. Flip one hotel room deal, or let that lie about peace commissioners stand uncorrected for one more day, and the vote fails, the war ends without it, and slavery survives the peace. Thaddeus Stevens, the abolitionist who had fought harder than almost anyone in Congress to get that amendment passed, put it best afterward. The greatest measure of the 19th century was passed by corruption, aided and abetted by the purest man in America. Now hold that up against a different leader, one with every advantage Lincoln didn't have. Full authority, no hostile Congress to bribe, no war clock running out, just one decision, made in private, about who would inherit the most powerful office on earth, and he got it catastrophically wrong, for the opposite reason Lincoln got it right. Marcus Aurelius is, by most honest measures, the closest history ever came to Plato's old dream of a philosopher king, a man who sat in freezing military tents on the edge of the empire, writing what we now call the Meditations, genuinely trying to live by stoic virtue while running the largest power on the planet. For nearly a century before him, Rome had solved one of the oldest problems in politics. How do you hand power to the right person instead of just the next person in line? Each emperor looked across the empire, found the most capable man available regardless of bloodline, and adopted him as heir. It worked. It gave Rome a golden age. Then Marcus had a son of his own, Commodus. The stories about young Commodus vary, and some of them come from historians writing decades after the fact, with their own reasons for exaggeration. But the pattern in them holds steady: cruelty, vanity, instability, visible well before he ever sat on a throne. Cassius Dio, who lived through what came next, wrote that Marcus raised and educated his son in the best way he knew how, and was left deeply disappointed in the result. Marcus looked at what was standing in front of him and chose the son he wished he had instead. He had one job: the adoptive system existed specifically to spare him from having to do himself, name the most capable successor, even if it meant passing over his own blood and, in the most extreme reading, moving against that son to stop a civil war before it started. That's the lion's job, the hard, forceful call nobody wants to make. Marcus couldn't make it, not for lack of courage on the battlefield, because he couldn't stomach the cruelty required to act on what was actually in front of him, instead of what he wished were true. He kept his own conscience clean. Marcus died in the year 180. Commodus took the throne at 18, and what followed wasn't decline. It was collapse. He had himself worshipped as the reincarnation of Hercules, and commissioned statues of his own face on Hercules' body. He fought in the arena as a gladiator, in bouts rigged so he could never lose, and staged hunts where he slaughtered exotic animals by the hundreds for an audience. Cassius Dio, watching from the senatorial seats, describes him tying disabled citizens together, dressing them as giants, and clubbing them to death for entertainment. He taxed and spent the treasury toward ruin to pay for all of it, and executed senators who so much as displeased him. Dio, watching Rome come apart in real time, wrote the line that outlived the empire itself. Roman history now descended, in his words, from a kingdom of gold to one of iron and rust. 12 years in, Commodus was strangled inside his own palace by men who'd run out of patience. The empire didn't recover. It fell straight into a year of civil war, 5 different men claiming the throne, the exact kind of chaos the adoptive system had existed for nearly a century to prevent. Marcus kept his hands clean of his son's blood. In doing that, he let an empire drown in the blood of its own citizens instead. Both men were, in effect, choosing whose comfort to protect. Lincoln spent his own conscience to buy 4 million people their freedom. Marcus spent an empire's future to keep his own conscience intact. There's an easy version of this lesson, and it's wrong. The easy version says stop trusting people and look out for yourself first. Lincoln didn't lie and bribe his way through Congress to protect himself. Marcus didn't guard his conscience out of cruelty. Both of them were protecting something. The difference was who they were protecting it for. The actual lesson is harder to live with than either one, staying pure or becoming ruthless. Seeing the world clearly stops being optional the moment other people's outcomes depend on your decision. It stops being a private virtue and becomes a form of responsibility. Marcus wasn't only failing himself when he refused to see Commodus clearly. He was making a decision on behalf of millions of people who never got a vote in it. Lincoln knew exactly what lying to Congress would cost him, and paid it anyway, so other people wouldn't have to pay something much larger. So ask yourself a harder question than whether you're a good person. What are you willing to risk about your own goodness when someone else's outcome depends on your decision? Most of the time, protecting your own conscience and protecting the people who need you point in the same direction. Every so often, they split apart. When they do, what you choose says more about you than either purity or ruthlessness ever could. See the world as it is, not as you wish it were. Sometimes that costs you your comfort. Sometimes it costs you a piece of your own conscience. Either way, it's cheaper than the alternative. A pure heart in a corrupt world isn't a beacon, it's a target, and everyone standing behind it pays the difference.